Hi there, it's me, Jordan Van Haslo. Welcome to Jordan Van Haslo and Friends live on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. Let's get on with the show. He's a magician, he's a producer, he's a businessman, and I guess I call him a friend, Mr. Dale Hindman. Thank you so much for joining me, Dale.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And I think you were the first friend that you met, that I was the first friend you met in LA, which is not good for me. But anyway, I'm here.
How have you been? Can I tell you, I don't think, honestly, I think it's been like over a year since we were actually in a room together.
Yeah. And it's not been long enough. So, yeah.
So how have you been
No,
keeping yourself?
actually, I miss that big smile and those dreadlocks, and you're looking like you were important.
Oh, thank you so much. Obviously, my check cleared because you're giving all of those nice compliments to me.
Check? I'm German. I'm German. I'm not Czech.
So how have you been spending? Well, I think when I first started this show, I've been asking everyone how they spent their spring vacation, their spring break, and that moved into summer vacation, and now it's like December. So how have you been keeping yourself occupied this year? I guess it's been almost a year.
Yeah, it's been absolutely some of the worst times, obviously, in the world and in everybody's lives. I mean, I moved into my apartment over a year ago this January. And I love it and all of that. And now I'm facing the fact that I only have a few months left of my cash to be able to stay here. The company that I work for, we derive our income. It's called Magic Castles, Inc. And we license the name to the world famous Magic Castle in Hollywood. But they've been out of business since the middle of March. And they're doing this drive up thing where people get food. But the income from that has been minimal. So our company is on the ropes. I'm on the ropes. I wake up in the morning thinking, how am I going to survive? And I go to bed thinking, how am I going to survive and the company survive? So, and I know I'm not alone out there in the world. Everybody is going through similar things, and it's horrendous. And now we have this surge again. And what bothers me the most is just people not wearing a mask and social distancing. I don't understand it. The selfishness of people gets me beyond belief because they're impacting my health as well if they don't take precautions. And so anyway, I mean, I watch television. I listen to music. I go for walks. I try to, think about what's going to happen sooner than later, hopefully. But obviously,
and hopefully sooner, right? And hopefully sooner, right? I mean, like we have we have 2 vaccines, and I think that Pfizer just request emergency approval so they could start distributing it as early as next month, right?
No, not next month. Probably in January. And it's 2 doses. There's a first dose, and then you have to wait a month and you take the second dose. That's what I was hearing on CNN today. But yes, that's good news. And if enough people get vaccinated, of course, there's already people that are saying they won't get vaccinated, just like the ones that don't get a flu vaccine every year or a shingles vaccine or a pneumonia vaccine. I'm 67 years old, so I can't, near your age, and I can't afford to get any of those things. So, I'm really old, and people don't remember sometimes because of the younger generation.
Because no one was around when you were. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
continue.
Except for the dinosaurs. But the polio vaccine, when it first came out, they were distributed at school, and you lined up, and there was a little cup with a sugar cube in it, and it had the vaccine in it, and you swallowed the sugar cube, and that's how you got vaccinated against polio. And that vaccine eradicated a disease that was crippling, including, FDR and other people over the years. So we are in that same type of thing now in terms of if people would just realize that vaccination is not, it's not horrible. It's something that could save your life and the lives of your friends. I mean, you said I was in the entertainment industry, which I am, and I have a friend who I worked with on a number of shows, directed and produced. and he was on the show, and he's fighting for his life in Michigan right now. They finally got him back off a ventilator, but he's probably in his early 60s, and it's really hard for me to understand the selfishness of people that put others people at risk. For the first time. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I think it's sort of, I mean, it's kind of how people are, right? Unless something directly affects them, or unless they see it in their lives, it's not very real to them. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like I know, quite a few people who have suffered from coronavirus. And I also know quite a few people who are definitely not doing all that they should be doing to stem the spread of coronavirus. People are just assholes.
They're selfish assholes, and it's all about. And I watched, just before I called you for this, I was watching some people being interviewed. I think it was CNN. I'm not sure where it was, and these guys were sitting there saying, "Well, I'm not going to put on masks. I'm not going to have my rights infringed," and the arguments have already been made. So
breaking
I'm glad
news.
I wasn't there in front of that guy, because I would say, so when you get in your car, do you fasten your seatbelt? Well, of course. Do you signal when you're going to, turn left? Yes. Do you stop at a red light? Yes. So isn't that infringing on your rights to do whatever you want?
Totally.
It's the same thing.
Breaking
news.
Anyway, Donald Trump
I
Jr. has just tested positive for coronavirus.
Who?
Donald Trump Jr.
Okay, I'll pause for a minute while I shed a tear.
Spoiler alert, clearly we're not broadcasting live today. It's Friday the 20th. But it's really interesting that you mentioned that about seatbelts and lights, because I remember, so I'm old enough to remember when they made it law that you had to wear seatbelts if you were in the front seat of a car. And I wasn't old enough to really care or really pay attention, but I can only imagine that there were tons of people who were complaining and bitching about that as well. You're infringing upon my rights. I'm in my car.
Right.
I'm in my, it's really tough. I mean, I think the thing about the mask situation, what makes that so contentious is just the way that masks and such were communicated at the beginning of this, right? At the beginning of all of this, it was don't wear masks. And I think that they originally said that because they wanted to make sure that there were enough masks for all of the first responders and such. But I think it was kind of like, don't wear masks, they're not going to do anything. And then, oh, well, this is just a flu, it's no big deal, to you have to wear a mask and you have to stay inside. And it kind of went from 0 to 60 over the course of a week and a half. And I think because
the scientists did not have a full understanding in the initial stages, and they had to do more research and they had to figure it out. I have a degree in biology. And so I was a pre-med major, so I understand the science behind this. They were working with something that was unlike anything that's been seen since the H1N1 and the SARS virus. They're all in similar categories, this virus. And so what they had to do was learn how it really was transmitted, and they didn't have enough case studies yet to determine that. So as more cases happened, they were able to come to more definitive protocols of what's going to work and not work. I mean, and the thing that I also have asthma, so I'm an at-risk person, and I'm also 67 years old. And so I have two things that are...
You're old and you can't breathe. That's not a very good combination.
I know. Just like you're old and you can't sing. The point is that I think that, I don't fault the scientists for coming out, but here's the thing. What we have had a lack of is a consistent national policy and a consistent leader, and a leader who would say, wear a mask. I'm wearing a mask. You should wear a mask. Instead, we've had a leader and people around him that are sycophants, and they just will follow the Pied Piper, into the ocean and all drown.
Absolutely. And that's what
And
I meant. I didn't mean the scientists themselves. I meant specifically just the communications throughout this
right, the
entire
communications
process.
have been horrible because the scientists haven't been allowed to communicate what really is happening. So anyway, it's just
Ye-
it. So when you ask what am I doing, I'm trying to stay healthy. I am disappointed severely about this holiday season. My daughter and son-in-law live in the valley, and my sister-in-law lives in Northridge, and we were all going to get together for Thanksgiving, and we canceled that, even though because my daughter has asthma as well. And
Right.
now my youngest daughter and her husband were coming out for Christmas, and we're going to
And
cancel
they're
Christmas
in
because
like Denver, right? They're in Colorado.
yeah, Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
So they were
Yeah.
going to come out here because they alternate every year with his parents who are in Arkansas or Georgia or somewhere like that. So they were going to come out here for Christmas, but my oldest daughter just is afraid because they're coming from Colorado Springs and they have to get tested, and so we're going to cancel everything. And so in our home, Christmas was a huge holiday. I mean, we used to have a tree in every room and lights everywhere and all of that. And so this year it's just kind of like last year I decorated my whole new apartment with Christmas and had a couple of dinner parties. And this year I'm like sitting looking at the silverware and the china and going, well, I guess you'll stay in there for a while.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's tough, and it's like it's created this new normal. But I mean, what I will say, and I'll ask you this because it's just talking to people and asking them. I mean, as horrible as this year has been in terms of disrupting everyone's lives, in terms of the devastation of this illness and what it's done and the lives that it's taken. I do think that we, at least from my perspective, if there is some type of a silver lining in it, is that it's really kind of given us almost a year to kind of stop. I mean, I don't know, how busy your day to day was prior, pre-COVID, but I know that it just never ended. Like there's this, you have to return this phone call, you have to be here, and then dinner here, and then, it's one thing that I feel has been a silver lining is that I feel that I've had a moment to kind of stop, breathe, reassess, kind of like reassess like what my value system, reassess what matters to me, reassess what I really want to be doing. Have you had any of those kind of aha moments as they were over the last year since you've been, forced to be at home and be with yourself?
well, I mean, I still go to my office every day, but I've been working for free since the middle of July. So I go in and I meet with Milt Larson, who's the owner of the company and the creator of the Magic Castle in Hollywood. And so I go in for about a half a day and I do whatever bills we can afford to pay. And then, we have lunch together and he talks about things, and he's writing a weekly column type thing in Facebook. And so I work with him on that, but the problem with me is I've always been a person that's had multiple things going on, and I've
Mm-hmm.
always been able to do them. So it's not a big deal for me. To direct a show one day and to have this and that, it's just I've always been that way since I was young, so it doesn't really bother me. So the fact that I'm not doing a lot of things is kind of weird. And then the other side of that is that, I'm the type that can't not worry about how am I going to pay the bills in 2 months, and how's the company going to pay the bills, and how are we going to survive? So those are things that I just can't put aside because that's not my persona, even though people say, well, it'll all work out. Well,
You're like, how?
I don't, well, that's my problem. I love math. I've been good in math all my life. I've done financial budgets for companies and was at a Bank of America for like, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, or maybe longer. And so I've been in I love numbers. And so when I look at, I do the numbers, I crunch the numbers and I go, how, so anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well,
that goes with, so, and listen, the thing about this is I'm not alone. I mean, there are millions of people out there that are wondering how they're going to pay their bills. And, fortunately in LA, the DWP is not shutting power or water off if people are delinquent, and they're a moratorium on evictions. So, but, at some point down the road, everybody will have to pay the Pied Piper. Okay, you owe this much in, rent.
yeah,
And
you
owe
owe
this much in,
7 months in rent, 7 months in
right.
gas and water, totally.
And so how are you going to pay that now that you're working again? But, and of course, here in LA, we're going to a curfew starting tomorrow night. So starting at 10 o'clock, all restaurants and everything who have had outdoor dining, first of all, their capacity is being restricted now to 50%. And they have to close at 10 o'clock and can't reopen until 5. So now some of the bars in West Hollywood who have a patio and who are opening, the good news is that they'll be closing because there's been a lot of irresponsible people gathering there in line, not wearing masks, and it's just unconscionable to me. I don't understand it. Anyway, getting off my soapbox, but so what other things do you want to ask me about?
Well, let's talk about more happy stuff. Let's talk about magic. I've always wondered, because I know, for those in Radio Land, you're the COO of Magic Castles Inc., which is the organization of the founder of the Magic Castle and owns all the trademarks and copyrights of the Magic Castle. But did you start off as a magician, or did you start off producing, or did magic kind of lead you to producing? Talk to me a little bit about that.
The story is this. When I was, my middle name is Raymond, and I'm named after my grandfather on my mother's side, Ray Muse, Raymond F. Muse. And Ray was very involved in the magic world here in Los Angeles and also nationally with the Society of American Magicians. And he was a member of organizations, and he produced shows, magic shows. He performed when he was younger in states in Indiana and Kentucky and things like that. And actually, his father kind of disowned him because in the late 1800s and early 20s, magic was, just looked as an evil art.
It's like the devil's work, right?
Yeah. So he moved. He was out here in Los Angeles, and then my mother. He had a son by a previous marriage, and then my grandmother, and then they had my mother. And so when I was 5, he gave me a magic kit. It was actually like an aluminum trunk that said he had painted on there Dale's Magic, and inside was a bunch of magic. And it wasn't like the magic kits you buy in a store, because there were magic stores in Hollywood called Hollywood Magic and Burt Wheeler's and all of that. So he would go in there and they all knew him, and he bought a bunch of magic things that were really high end for those days, especially, and gave them to me when I was 5. And of course I became fascinated. And then when I was about 10, I did some shows with him where I assisted him on stage. But what we didn't know at the time is that he had problems, and it was colon cancer. Turned out to be colon cancer. And he was going to a doctor who was a magician, but they just thought it was indigestion, and they didn't, really have the stuff they have today. And so he passed away in 1965. But so my interest was already peaked. And when he passed, he had a garage full of magic, and he had books galore and all of that. Also, you should know that he played the piano and he was a choir director. So music was also part of his life. And so what I did was I took some of his books with me when we were cleaning out the house, and some of the magic. And then when I was in high school, I started picking it back up, and I performed for a couple of high school talent shows and things like that. And then I was off to college, and so things got interrupted. But after that, I got involved with the local magic scene, the Society of American Magicians local assembly. I ultimately became president. And then I got involved with the Magic Castle as a member because my grandfather and the father of the brothers, Milt and Bill, who founded the Magic Castle, were very, very good friends. And so they knew my family, and so I became a member. And then over the years, that led into me directing magic shows for an annual show called It's Magic, and magic convention shows, and doing the lighting and the sound and stage managing as well, and producing some of the shows. And then ultimately, in the Academy of Magical Arts, which is the club, and the clubhouse is the Magic Castle, I became a member of the board, and then ultimately rose to being president. And outside of Bill Larson Jr., who was the brother, I was the longest president on record. Now there's term limits. Before me, there weren't term limits. So,
are you the reason for that?
No, actually, we changed the bylaws and we put in term limits.
Yeah.
Because we had some people on the board of directors that had been there way too long. So there was a lot of things that went on, and a lot of stories about that would take hours. But anyway, so the magic thing.
I'm sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead. So.
Oh, no. I was going to say, so talk to me about that, because it's so interesting. Because before I met you, and before I met Chris, and I'd like magic and just the magical, the community of magicians were, like not on my radar. And then I met you, I met Chris, and I started hanging around with your circle. And then I went, I came to Vegas, and all of a sudden I started meeting all these folks who perform on the Strip. And it's just really interesting. It kind of reminds me, like, I came up in the cabaret world. And the cabaret world is a pretty small, tight-knit community. It's an international community, but it's still a small community, and everyone kind of knows each other, and everyone kind of, and I find magic the same way. Talk to me just a bit about, I'm just so curious, like, as you started doing, you got this kit from your grandfather and you started working on it, like in terms of just performing in front of folks and performing professionally, how does one build like, for example, as a musician,
well,
right? You go down to play at the club, you go down.
Yeah, it's similar. You just start doing it. You find a place to play, you do your act. A lot of times it might have been for free, but you learn because, you get out there, you try some things, you see how the audience reacts, and then you keep it or you throw it away or you perfect it. I mean, my last act that I used to perform at the castle was all about money because I was a banker for many years. So I took it, and my grandfather loved theme acts. And so my act was all around money, and then it ended up with a mathematical thing, which of course math and numbers and money all go together. So, but a lot of people just do tricks, and I mean that they just get up there and they do this trick and that trick or whatever. I was raised and mentored by the man that my grandfather mentored and taught magic to, that there should be a theme, that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to, if I mentor somebody, I tend to do the same thing. But magic is a family. Of course, I always say it's dysfunctional, but it's a family. Excuse me a minute.
No worries.
It's not COVID. So, that is how I've grown up in the family of magic. And so that was that part of my life. Like my grandfather, who played piano and was a choir director, I learned how to play the piano. And I also was a choir director for several different choirs for a number of years in a couple of different churches. And that was part of my life. And when I was going to college, I was a biology pre-med major. But in those days, in the middle 70s, it was really tough to get into medical school. And so I didn't make it. And then I went into banking and worked at Bank of America for a while. And again, used my math skills. And actually, the bank had a couple of speech contests, or had an annual speech contest. And 2 times in a row, I went to the finals because I was doing magic in my speech. So I think I came 3rd or something like that. So, yeah.
How
But it was like
fun.
in front of 1,000 people up in San Francisco was the one, and somewhere else and down in LA in the other. And it was a lot of fun, and the recognition was great. And, magic is a great thing to demonstrate a point. And there's a lot of people out there that use that in their speeches and things like that because it keeps the attention of the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been to speeches where the person goes on and on and on, and you just want to,
Just
die. So,
yeah, no, yeah, totally. Yeah, no,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, so what do you think about, I mean, like again, I mean, I know you're feeling the pain because so much of your income, the income of your company comes from the ability to have live entertainment. I'm feeling the pinch. We're all feeling the pinch. What do you think about live entertainment and how, once there's a vaccine, yada, yada, yada? What do you think in terms of how it's going to come back and how quickly? I was reading an article in Deadline, New York and Company, which is the tourism organization for the city of New York. They're projecting that
Yeah.
tourism isn't going to come back to the city of New York to pre-COVID levels until about 2025. And I read that and I thought, well, shit, because, right now I'm supposed to be performing in Vegas. I actually got a text today inviting me because Carrot Top's reopening tonight. And but I'm thinking like, well, how he's probably performing to like half or a quarter of the capacity,
Right.
while it works for
Right.
someone like a Carrot Top because he's only him, for like a music act or for the theater where you have like, a huge ensemble or whatnot. It doesn't work. What do you think is in store for Magic and the return to people going out and seeing it and
Well,
performing and being able to.
Yeah, I think, at the castle, you've been there, so the performance rooms are small and the dining rooms, it's only 5,000 square feet. So the whole complex.
Really?
So well, I mean, it's 15,000 square feet with the garage that was converted into rooms. So,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah.
the dining room is not that big. So, 25% capacity is going to be a small audience. Now, there have been small audiences in those rooms before, and you just work them anyway. It's just not the same when you have a full audience, But I think we're going to still be looking at social distancing and all of that. Now, I know that David Copperfield reopened, but he was at, I think, 50% capacity, or it might have been less. And unfortunately, then one of his crew members was diagnosed, so they shut back down for a couple of weeks to make sure everybody is okay. And the luxury of that is that, and David and Penn and Teller and others have big showrooms.
Right.
So I think it's going to be, now I do know some of the smaller magic shows that have reopened because I have some friends that are in them. But they only, and I don't know what capacity they're doing. I'm assuming they're only doing, 25% or whatever. I think that's what it's just, the arts have been crushed by this because when you think of, I was supposed to go see Hamilton at the Pantages. I had got tickets for me and a friend. And of course, then the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there went that. And when you think of the Pantages, which seats about 2,300 people at 25% capacity, performers, as you well know, when you're on that stage, you feed off of that audience.
Totally.
And yes, you might know the lines inside and out and all of that, but you feed off that audience in terms of how long do you hold that ending note on your solo, or
the energy of the energy of the room.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's the same way as a magician. The energy off the room, when you've got a good crowd, you respond better than the ones where you go back behind the curtain and said, get the hell out of here and don't let the door hit you in the ass. Type of thing. So,
Totally.
So I think we're under adjustments. I can't imagine that it would be 2025 before we get back to that normalcy, because that would be horrific for the people that rely on that industry and for the country, quite honestly, because coming out of this, the country is not only going to need leadership and getting this under control, but leadership and how do we get back to some sense of normalcy so that people are not afraid of everything, you know?
And I think that like that, I think that that's going to be the biggest challenge, right? Like, I think that, vaccine and such aside, I think it's going to be a while before people feel comfortable being like elbow to elbow in an enclosed room for 2.5 hours with a bunch of strangers. And I think that that's going to be the biggest challenge. And even you're talking about like the 25%, the energy of it, but even more than the energy of it, I'm thinking about the economics of it. Like, I know that like in the shows that I've, done and my own shows, if we were operating at 25% capacity, like it wouldn't even be financially feasible to produce the productions,
Right.
You know what I mean? Without the,
And I think, yeah.
I'm saying, or the tickets would have to be like, $500 a piece,
Well, I think the next few months are going to be critical, not only to get new leadership in place and to chart a path going forward about, we as a country. The problem is we have a very divided country, and we have people out there who just absolutely refuse to believe that this is real. And, and unless their own family members have been impacted by it, either they've died or they've caught it and they're, still reeling from the effects of it. And it just boggles my mind because you only have to listen to a nurse the other day crying because her nurses are exhausted. And now with this surge, because people are, and now there's going to be people that disobey the Thanksgiving thing. And so now we're going to see more surge and Christmas, So
yeah, I think it's going to be crazy.
Listen,
like after the holidays. Yeah.
But, the vaccine will be a big deal to help boost, to get some things back going again. And it may not be back at full capacity, but at least there won't be as much fear for people getting together if they know, they've been vaccinated. But just because I'm vaccinated doesn't mean I'm going to walk out without a mask on until I know that 100% of this country has been vaccinated. And that's not going to happen because some people don't believe in vaccines. They don't get the flu vaccine. They don't get the pneumonia vaccine. And so they're carriers. But, I feel comfortable in what the scientists are doing because I have a background in that. And nobody has ever lived through anything like this. I mean, I know there was the Spanish flu in 1818, but I wasn't around. I know you don't believe that, but I wasn't around. And, or it was 1918, excuse me, 1918. I wasn't around then either. But
I think it's different too, because even though that the Spanish flu was a pandemic, just the way that we travel, we don't travel in the same, we travel in a different way, and our traffic patterns are much different than they were back then. I mean, just a perfect example, right? This time last year, over the course of a 2-week period, I was in Los Angeles, then New York, then back in Los Angeles, then in Salt Lake City, then back in Los Angeles, then in Vegas, literally in like a 2-week period. So just that type of a traffic pattern alone, and the ability to literally carry viruses all around the world in a really short period of time wasn't necessarily the case back then. So totally, I agree 100%.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's the issue, is that we have mass transit. So you get on an airplane in a closed container for 12 hours or whatever it is, and even though the air is being recycled and all of that, it's still a place that you could, and then talk about a cruise ship, as a friend of mine said, that's a floating petri dish. And I've been on some cruise ships, and so I don't know, it's the devastation across the world has been massive, and it's going to take a period of time for things to come back. I don't know if the word normal will ever be achieved again, because I think that there's always going to be some element of fear out there for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that's gonna take a while to get over. Just like depression took a long time to get over because we didn't have the tools that we have now in the financial markets. But in those days, it took a long time for people to feel free, like they could spend an extra dollar or an extra $2.
Or comfortable, like putting their money in the bank. Like, totally.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things evolve. But I really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, like I said, if the Magic Castle comes back at 25% capacity, given what the numbers they were doing, our company could survive through the monthly expenses, even to the point where I might be able to get a little bit of a salary. So that would help. But I don't know if that's going to be realistic until we see this surge and what may be a second surge after the Christmas holidays to come back down. Now, I'm hoping that people are taking this seriously enough since Thanksgiving is next week. But people are being told not to get together with more than 6 people, and people are already saying, I don't care. We're going to all get together. And I don't understand, because what if grandma's over there who's 85 and you have COVID, but you haven't been tested because you're too stubborn to get tested? I've been tested 3 times already.
Right.
And I really haven't been around anybody. But it's just crazy to me that, especially because insurance covers it, and even if it doesn't, it's not that expensive. And now, they're talking about, they're starting to mail out, like in Orange County, they're starting to mail out kits, COVID-19 test kits. They're the saliva ones, but they're still PCR to households in Orange County. And that's great. I mean, if everybody could get a kit and, do your thing and send it in and get your results in like 3 or 4 days, you would have a more comfortable level of, engaging in things. So
totally. But still, even with the testing, there comes the mask, right? Like, oh, wonderful, I don't have COVID, so now let me go dance in the middle of Santa Monica Boulevard. You know what I mean? Like,
well, no, and that's the problem. It's just like when you get the flu vaccine or the pneumonia vaccine, it doesn't mean you go up and kiss a person who has flu and pneumonia, because there's still, anyway, I guess it's just unfathomable to me that these people will not accept what the reality of this is. And that, again, I saw somebody today, or it was on one of the things on Facebook, that said, well, this is a hoax. It's just a hoax. Well, why don't you tell that to the 235,000 plus people who have already died from it?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me.
Well, what it is that it's more than mind-boggling. I think it's disrespectful, right? It's disrespectful to those who've suffered and died from it.
And it's become, because, and I've said this for years, Jordan, I have watched people become more and more and more selfish over the years. It's always about me. It's about me. I want to be first in line. You don't matter. I matter more than you. I'm going to cut you off when I'm driving because I'm more important than you are. I had a guy today that blew right through a stop sign where I had the right of way. I had already been there, and I saw him, and he just then decided to go right through the stop sign and turn left right in front of me. And then I was turning left. I was turning left at a left arrow that I had, and this guy was sauntering across the street, right in front of me. And I had to stop and wait for him to get his rear end across the street. And it's just this attitude of me first. I'm more important than you are. And unfortunately, it's gotten worse during this pandemic. I can tell you how many drivers are just, they zoom around me because I'm doing 35. And guess what? About 2 blocks down, they hit a red light, and then you end up
catching back up to them, right?
Right. And it's like, I hope, asshole, that was really worth it for you.
Oh, well, like,
But
I
I
can
don't. I
see,
think it's that behavior that goes, well, I'm going to go out to the club anyway. I'll just sit on the patio and I'm not going to wear my mask because it's okay.
yeah, totally. And I can see how, during this period of, the pandemic, how that has happened, right? Because people are frustrated, people are scared, and they take it out on others. What do you attribute it to? You're saying that, like how you've seen just over the years, like people get more and more selfish. What do you attribute that to? Because this is actually a conversation that I've had with a lot of friends of mine, agreeing, recognizing the same thing that you recognize.
I don't know. It's this self-entitlement mentality that I'm more important than anybody else. And let me just say, I think part of it is parenting. I was raised that you respected other people, that you respected your elders and your family members, that you cared about others more than you cared about yourself. Kind of the golden rule. And I'm not going to brag here, but there have been times when I saw some people sitting at dinner and I just picked up their check and I didn't want anybody to know. I just did it because random act of kindness. And then somehow they found out or they texted me and they said, oh, thank you. I said, look, I only want you to do one thing. Just pay it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Pay it forward. Do it for somebody else. But if everybody would just stop and look at themselves and say, how can I be more responsible? How could I do something nice for somebody else rather than look in the mirror and figure out how pretty I am?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Jordan. I didn't mean that about you.
Anyway. Speaking of being kind to others, are you guys, I mean, I know again, there's so much uncertainty about like when, like you guys can reopen and what that's going to look like and if you can reopen and when and all of that jazz. But have you guys kind of been thinking about like what the future might look like, particularly with like a shorter capacity? Have you been looking at maybe like,
well, no, because we have no input to what happens inside that building. The Academy of Magical Arts is run by a board of directors and they decide and they make the decisions. They don't ask us for advice. The only thing that we get is we get a royalty off of the use of the name based upon food and beverage. So they don't really ask us for input. It's up to them to make the chart, to do what they can do within the parameters of what the government will allow. And I know that they're trying to maximize. As soon as they're allowed to do something, they're going to do what they can under the guidelines because they're bleeding through money in their reserve. And we're sitting here with, our monthly check from them for the last couple of months. I mean, it's laughable. So,
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't even cover the rent,
Well, now how about on your end? Have you guys kind of thought, because another thing that I think that this pandemic has shown everybody whose livelihood or whose, business is that of hospitality or live entertainment is like, oh, wow. Maybe there's like a need to diversify because if there's a reason that people can't come together, like everything's cooked. In this and throughout this, have you guys kind of like been like thinking about like, oh, what does the brand Magic Castle look like? Or what might it look like in other, like.
Yeah, we actually have a deal with a major production company and a major company behind them in terms of wanting content. And we have something in development. It's just that they finally have hired a director and they have a writer. So the issue is how long before there's a script. And then Milt and I are executive producers on that. So we get a fee. Magic Castle Inc. gets a fee. So if that happened soon, we'd be fine. I'd be fine personally. Milt would be fine personally. The company would be okay. It's just that with everything that happened, productions are just now basically
getting back on their feet. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but I mean, they are, because the last few days when I go on my walk, I've seen multiple production trucks around and they're filming in different things. And so production is back, it's just with a lot of restrictions and all of that, but they're filming. So if we can get this show off the ground, soon, then that would bring in some money to get us through what may be a dry spell for part of next year as well.
Totally.
So that's it. We also had a deal with a company in China. Unfortunately, they've had some issues legally there with just politics in China. So they still owe us a lot of money. If that money got freed up, we'd be fine.
Yeah.
So, but you go to bed thinking, geez, wouldn't that be nice? And you wake up in the morning, that's not probably, who knows if that's going to happen in the next few months. And every month that goes by, the cash goes down, down, down. So.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. It's where we are, right? It's where we are. Yowza.
Yeah.
The yowza.
Yeah.
But I think that would be really cool, like some content, like Magic Castle branded content. I think that would be really fascinating because it's such a Oh no, go for it.
No, we're excited about it. It's just I know that they've got a writer. They hired the director, and he had several writers that he liked, and they've hired a writer. So now I think it's a matter of them figuring out exactly what the show should be, and then the two production companies involved saying yes, and then taking that to the people who are funding everything and saying, "Here's what this is. Are you happy with that? Great, let's go into production." So
totally.
The great thing about Milt and I, we're executive producers, but we don't have to do anything. I mean, it's pay or play. So, either way. I mean, we get paid if we do nothing.
No, absolutely.
So, and one or two episodes would take care of a lot of issues financially. So
yeah, no, absolutely. How did you start working with Milt? Because from the outside of magic, Milt seems like the king of all magic, and it's like that almost, again, as the outsider, that almost makes you like the hand of the king. So how did you become the magical imp?
Milt is a great thinker, creator, idea man. He built the Magic Castle, and then he did the Variety Arts downtown, and he did the Mayfair Music Hall, and its magic shows. He's always been the dreamer. Okay, he's the Walt Disney of magic. I'm the Roy Disney of magic, because Milt brought me on as an assistant because I had left the bank and I was trying to manage some magicians and make money off of it, which wasn't really working. So he brought me in as an administrative assistant years ago. And then but he also knew me from the board of directors of the castle, of the academy, and my work there and all of that. So, and my bank, because I was his banker for his personal accounts and business accounts as well. And so he wanted me on board. And then eventually I just started taking more and more responsibility. And, he always says the same thing. He's the Walt Disney and I'm the Roy Disney, because the story is, without Roy Disney, Disney never would have made it. He needed his brother to make the deals with the banks and find the money and do all of that, while he was off dreaming about the next ride or the next movie or whatever. So that's how that happened. And so I moved up into my role now, which I'm COO. And but we're struggling like everybody else, because our income that we relied on isn't there. So
yeah, totally. How long have you been working with Milt?
Oh God, I was trying to think of that the other day. I think it's been at least 20 years.
Yeah,
something like that. I think it was 2004 or 5 that I started working with him. So that would be maybe 15 years, something like that. So
Milt is a really fascinating guy. Like every time I've met him, he's always had some really fascinating or interesting stories. In your time working in his orbit, like is there like any like one moment that you kind of remember as like, okay, this is such
I hear
stupid experience, or like, no, but I'm not his stories. I'm saying like just your own story, like working in this world and working. Do you have like a moment in your career with Magic Castles Inc. that you're like, oh my goodness, this is such an experience that it would only have happened under these set of circumstances?
Well, I think when we inked the deal with this company in China that wanted to do a theme park type magic Castle thing, and they flew us over for the signing and the publicity and all of that. So, you know, they flew us business class to China and back, and nice hotels and nice rooms and all of that. But that was a nice highlight, nice point. On the other hand, you know, when you've got that jet lag and China's a very interesting country. When China's a very interesting country, and the food was very interesting, and our hosts were delightful, and they were very accommodating. But so that was one particular moment, you know, we had, and so anyway, it's always the business that we're in. People are always bringing up ideas. The thing is, put the check on the table, and then we can talk further, you know. So
what's the worst proposal that you've ever gotten?
Oh, I don't
Aside
remember.
from me
There's,
calling and saying, "Hey, would you like to do my
yeah, though
show?"
there's been so many, but I just look at them and go, this is never going to work. You know, I mean, this one guy wanted to do something in a mall that had a restaurant in it, and they could turn it into like a Magic Castle type of environment and everything. And you looked at the plans, and it just wasn't going to work. And ultimately, none of that was going to happen because they were looking for us to put the money in. We said, no, we'll license the name. We license the name. You put up the money and you put it together. We license the name and we approve of the concept. Outside of that, we don't care. You know, we're not going to give you any money to do it. So it's the other way around anyway.
Yeah, totally.
So those are just how it goes. So anyway.
Oh, well, it happens. So you're not going to be spending the holidays with the fam. You guys are going to, as a result of the asthma and the corona, you're going to just kind of take it quick. So what do you have planned for the remainder of the year? This has been a year, by the way, and it's so interesting because it's been like the craziest year I can remember ever. And I keep thinking, wow, we have what, like maybe 45 days left in it. What else is going to happen between now and then? So barring some other craziness happening.
I don't want to get political here, but the uncertainty about the presidential election and the assholes that are doing this is adding more stress to the American public because it's constantly in a turmoil. There's enough turmoil about the COVID-19. I mean, I have a magician friend. I've probably done 20 shows with him where he was on the show and I was directing. And he just yesterday finally got off the ventilator to breathe on his own. And he was having problems. His liver is shot, so they had to drain fluid out of his liver. So his uncertainty, other friends that I know of that are struggling. And then we have the uncertainty of the presidential election and the Senate race. And I think all of that is adding stress. So I don't know what the next few months are going to hold, but I agree with you. I think that we're all trying to figure out, okay, we get a vaccine, people take the vaccine, people then we can start reopening things at a little faster rate or whatever. But, you know, I'm concerned because I think people are going to get together for the holidays no matter what the government says. And then they're going to spread it and they're going to have, you know, surges, and people are not happy about being restricted. You know, we in America don't like to have any restrictions, but, you know, so my family will not be together. And like I said, Christmas has always been a big time celebration for us. We would do Christmas Eve and dinner and presents. And then Christmas morning, we would have a breakfast and all get together and just spend time with each other. And I'm going to really miss that. It's because, you know, 2 years ago, my wife died. And so that first Christmas without her was tough. And, you know, here we are another Christmas where I'm not going to be with family. So it's just, I think that, you know, you get up in the morning and you go, well, what's going to happen today?
And that's exactly where we are. But I cling on to the fact that, you know what, it's been a tough 2020, but Soon it's gonna, yeah, we might have a little nuttiness when it comes to this additional surge and what's gonna happen after the holidays. But there's gonna be a vaccine. It, I think that this time next year, things are gonna be a whole lot brighter, and we're gonna be able to go back to having Thanksgivings and having our holidays and our Hanukkahs and our
Right.
Christmases together, and all. I think will be well, and I think that and I think again the upside is I think we'll be all that more thoughtful about how we do things and how we interact with each other. And I think that we'll all be that much more grateful when we are together. Hi there, it's Jordan Van Haslo. Thanks for listening. I hope you had as much fun as we did today. Before you go, be sure to like today's conversation and subscribe so you never miss another. Also, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Showtime with Jordan for breaking news and unaired behind the scenes. And don't miss us live every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. See you next time for another Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and friends.